The Galactic Empire believed it was invincible. Its fleet spanned galaxies, its soldiers numbered in the trillions, and its rule was absolute. Species across star systems had fallen under its flag, crushed beneath the weight of its war machines and bureaucracy. For centuries, the Empire had operated without resistance that truly threatened its foundations. They had encountered rebellions. Certainly, they had faced Death Worlders and militant species, but they always prevailed. They always broke the will of those who dared to stand against them. Humanity, they thought, would be no different. Humans had proven to be resilient, but to the Empire, they were still manageable. The human colonies on the frontier worlds were persistent in their desire for autonomy, but the Empire believed that with enough pressure, enough brutal reminders, they could tame the humans like any other species. They miscalculated. The Empire's intelligence had warned that humans were different, that their tenacity was not a flaw but an intrinsic, unbreakable core. The warning was dismissed. The humans were scattered across colonies, fractured by politics and distance. They would not unite. They would not retaliate. They would fear. The decision to make an example was made at the highest levels of Imperial command. On the frontier world of Corellian Prime, a 17-year-old human girl, named Liara, was arrested for shielding refugees from an Imperial cleansing operation. Her crime was defiance. Her sentence was execution. The Empire broadcasted the event across a galactic network, ensuring every corner of the galaxy could witness the punishment. The broadcast was cold, efficient, and public. They believed fear would spread. They believed the colonies would submit. Liara stood unflinching, her final words not of apology, not of regret, but defiance. She spoke directly to the camera, not to plead, but to remind every human watching that submission was not their way. And then she was gone. The Empire expected the silence of submission to follow. Instead, they heard the silence of preparation. Across the human colonies, something ancient and visceral awoke. Within moments of the broadcast ending, communication networks among the colonies surged with activity. The rage was instant, but it was also focused. Families mourned, but they did not despair. Soldiers abandoned protocol and requested immediate deployment. Civilians formed militia groups overnight. Logistic chains, dormant since the last Great War, were activated as if they had been rehearsed for this day. Humanity did not panic. Humanity remembered. On Earth, the political response was equally immediate. All diplomatic channels with the Empire were severed. No statements were issued. No warnings delivered. Instead, Earth's high command convened in silence, their decision unified without debate. They activated Protocol Black Flag, a contingency designed not for defense, but for the systematic dismantling of existential threats. The protocol was ancient, a relic from a time when humanity still feared annihilation from external forces. It had never been used. It had only been updated, refined, and expanded. Now it would be unleashed. Military production surged to full capacity within hours. Shipyards that had been mothballed for decades roared to life. Weapons banned under interstellar treaties were dusted off and prepared for immediate deployment. Civilian freighters were converted into gunships. Supply lines redirected to the front, and thousands of volunteers flooded into recruitment centers. There was no need for propaganda. The execution had spoken louder than any rallying cry. The name Liara became a beacon, not a victimhood, but vengeance. Allied species monitored the situation with growing concern. Some sympathized with the humans, but believed their response would be limited to the frontier skirmishes. Others feared what they might have unleashed. A few among the Allied worlds argued that the Empire had made a critical mistake, but they underestimated the depth of human commitment. Even species that had fought alongside humans in past conflicts failed to grasp the speed at which humanity was aligning. The old rivalries between Earth and the frontier colonies vanished overnight. Borders dissolved. There was no longer Earth and the colonies. There was only humanity. In the Imperial High Council, the initial reports of human fleet movements were dismissed as overreactions. The Empire believed their show of force had succeeded. They did not yet understand what it meant when a species refuses to negotiate. Within the first hour, Imperial outposts on the fringe of human space went dark. No distress signals. No survivors. The first human counterstrikes were executed with surgical precision. The humans did not seek to disable. They sought to erase. The speed of human mobilization confounded Imperial analysts. Entire fleets materialized where none had existed. Orbital defense grids appeared operational in hours. Supply convoys, which should have taken weeks to organize, were moving within minutes. It became evident that humanity had not built their infrastructure for commerce or defense. They had built it for war, dormant but always ready. Every civilian transport was a potential troop carrier. Every mining station could be converted into a weapons platform. The humans had built their society to pivot to total war at a moment's notice. As human ships advanced, the psychological impact rippled through the Empire's lower ranks. Planetary governors began requesting reinforcements, but the requests were ignored or delayed. Imperial command still believed the humans would seek terms. They did not. The human fleets bypassed heavily fortified systems, targeting the logistical arteries that kept the Empire functional. Communication relays, fuel depots, and supply chains were the first to fall. The Empire's ability to coordinate its forces began to fracture. Civilian populations across the human colonies transformed into war machines. Factories operated without pause, assembly lines churning out weapons and vehicles in quantities the Empire could not match. Entire generations, raised in peacetime, took up arms without hesitation. Training facilities overflowed. Resource extraction operations pushed to maximum yield. Every human system, every individual, aligned toward a singular purpose: retaliation without limit. Human leadership issued no demands, no ultimatums. The Empire waited for conditions, waited for a message. None came. The silence from Earth became more terrifying than threats. Human fleets advanced with absolute coordination, striking with such precision that Imperial commanders suspect a level of intelligence sharing the Empire could not match. What they did not understand was that the human response was not being directed by a singular command center. It was an instinctual mobilization, a species acting as one organism, driven by memory, by pain, by rage. Allied species began to distance themselves from the Empire. Some declared neutrality, fearing association with the coming annihilation. Others offered covert support to human forces, hoping to be spared the inevitable purge. The execution of Liara became a symbol, but not one of martyrdom. It became a warning to all who believed humans could be controlled by fear. The Galactic News Network shifted their narratives rapidly, portraying the Empire's actions as reckless, painting humanity as a force that should have never been provoked. Human fleets were not advancing cautiously. They were moving with a speed and coordination that shattered every Imperial expectation. Within the first hour, multiple Imperial supply stations had already been annihilated. The Empire had expected political posturing, demands, ultimatums. None arrived. Humanity's answer was operational silence and overwhelming violence. Every human ship acted as if part of a singular entity with one purpose: eradication of Imperial capacity. Imperial analysts scrambled to understand the scale of human mobilization. They assumed the initial strikes were isolated acts of frontier revenge. They soon realized entire sectors were falling in synchrony. Human fleets bypassed traditional battle lines, targeting communication hubs, fuel depots, dry docks, and manufacturing centers with merciless efficiency. The Empire's strategic reserves evaporated in hours. Imperial fleets deployed to defend key world arrived to find the worlds already glassed, the attackers gone, the supply chains in disarray. Human logistics did not follow known patterns. They materialized resources where none should have been. They rebuilt ships faster than the Empire could count their losses. The Empire had not prepared for an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. Imperial captains began refusing assignments into human operational zones. Officers resigned or vanished. Morale fractured as a realization spread that humanity's war was not limited to border skirmishes. It was total. Human cyber divisions crippled Imperial logistics without warning. Planetary defense networks collapsed as software was subverted remotely. Star bases found their weapon systems deactivated without a shot fired. Commanders desperate to rally resistance found themselves isolated, unable to coordinate, unable to retreat. Imperial doctrine had always relied on control through fear and overwhelming firepower. Against humanity, those weapons had no effect. The psychological effect across the Empire became a contagion. Stories of human retaliation outpaced the ability to verify them. Entire garrisons surrendered at the first human signal, some without even confirming human presence. Rumors spread that humans did not take prisoners. Rumors that surrender offered no safety, only swift obliteration. Human silence became more terrifying than imperial threats. Some imperial governors attempted to open diplomatic channels through third-party species. They offered reparations, resource concessions, even the return of occupied territories. Their pleas received no response. Human leadership did not acknowledge the offers. There was no negotiation. The Empire's demands died with Liara. Humanity was not seeking restoration. Humanity was erasing. Allied species who had once feared imperial dominance now reconsidered their loyalties. Some covertly supplied intelligence to human command in exchange for assurances of survival. Others distanced themselves from the Empire entirely, declaring neutrality and purging imperial envoys from their systems. Humanity's reputation shifted overnight from volatile upstarts to existential threats. They were no longer treated as an irritant to be contained, but as a force capable of unmaking galactic order. The humans advanced faster than their own supply projections predicted. Shipyards that had been dormant were fully operational. Civilian engineering crews transformed into mobile factory units capable of refueling and rearming fleets on the move. Every logistical calculation, the Empire made collapsed under the weight of human adaptability. Conventional war was no longer an option. Human tactics were asymmetrical, predatory, and merciless. They targeted stability itself. Every imperial infrastructure node was a valid target. Human forces did not seek defensive victories. They sought systemic collapse. Imperial Strategic Command attempted to consolidate their fleets around core worlds, abandoning outlying territories in the hope of slowing the human advance. They failed to understand that humans did not need to chase them. Humans simply bypassed entire defense lines, disabling supply routes and leaving isolated imperial worlds to wither. The Empire's high command still clung to belief that humans would eventually pause, that they would desire negotiation. They miscalculated again. Human silence persisted. Alien mercenaries under imperial contracts began deserting in waves. Stories of human anti-mercenary operations circulated, where entire privateer fleets disappeared without a trace. Rumors claimed that humans deployed specialized hunter groups, tracking mercenary factions across neutral space and eliminating them in deep void zones. The mercenaries knew they were not fighting for ideology, and against humans, payment was no longer worth the risk. Imperial leadership activated planetary conscription on a scale unseen in centuries. The response was inadequate. Human orbital strikes shattered mobilization centers before conscripts could be armed. Civilians fled en masse, knowing their worlds were abandoned by the Empire. The Empire could no longer protect its citizens, nor even itself. Panic spread to the imperial core sectors. For the first time in the Empire's history, internal riots and insurrections emerged not from rebellion, but from Imperial citizens who no longer believed survival was possible under Imperial rule. Human reclamation teams continued advancing alongside military operations. They cataloged not only the destruction inflicted upon human colonies, but also the identities of every Imperial officer, soldier, and governor complicit in the atrocities. The humans compiled exhaustive records with terrifying precision. They were not seeking revenge at random. They were building a list, and they made sure the Empire knew that the list would be completed. Imperial propaganda machines tried to control the narrative, but galactic networks increasingly ignored Imperial broadcasts in favor of human-transmitted data. Humanity had not issued a single speech, not a single declaration, yet their silence carried more weight than any Imperial decree. The human fleets moved with singular will, the source of which the Empire could not identify. Earth itself never broadcast message. Human colonies never released demands. The galaxy watched a species that had no interest in negotiating their pain. Imperial attempts at counteroffensives collapsed. Human fleets adapted too quickly. Traditional pincer maneuvers failed as human ships split into micro-fleets, appearing in multiple systems simultaneously. Imperials expected direct confrontations, but humans mastered battlefield evasion, striking weak points, retreating before retaliation was possible, and returning at unexpected angles. Imperial admirals soon found that even retreat offered no safety. Human pursuit groups bypassed defenses, cut escape routes, and hunted isolated fleets without rest. The Empire tried to employ psychological tactics, issuing threats of planetary bombardments in human sectors. They miscalculated again. Human counterattacks accelerated without pause. When the Empire destroyed a human frontier settlement in desperation, the human response was absolute. Within hours, the Imperial fleet responsible was obliterated. Within days, the command structure authorizing the strike was annihilated. Humans did not slow. They did not deter. They escalated.